hip, and then of course that
The designated hitter, number 35, Cleveland Brownlee.
Some look like trying to rush it a little too much to get the out, but all since the ball was softly hit.
And if you've lived in the city of London for any longer than 6 months, we don't have to tell you who is at the plate. Easily one of the nicest people you will ever meet. He may wear 35, but he remembers your name even if you've met him twice.
It's so nice to catch up again, just because it's like you've been around the league a long time. I remember when you broke in.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember when you broke in and everything else. It was just like, okay, this guy can hit. This guy can hit.
I think I surprised a lot of teams that first year. They were like, oh, okay, where did we get him from?
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's like you came from Clark Atlanta University. I had never heard of it.
Yeah, a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, okay, you had I believe you finished your degree in marketing, if I'm not mistaken. You had
you
finished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you came up here, and then how did that happen? Were you looking for something in the indie leagues or anything like that, or did London come calling and luck out?
No, it's actually a funny story. So I was back home, and I was doing pretty good in college ball, and my numbers there were really good. But we didn't have one of those programs where they really pushed you to the next level. We're more of an academic school than anything.
Yeah.
Sports is just starting to come around in those schools down south now, and right now our school is doing phenomenal in all sports. So they're coming around a lot better. It was more of I could play. I didn't know how good I was or the competition. Like I say, I was always one of the best around that area, but my parents never had the funds or anything to, put me in those elite programs. And we didn't know enough about those programs to do it. So right after college, scouts told me they didn't see my name on the draft board. Meanwhile, I'm thinking that, okay, a couple people came out and watched. I saw a couple people in the stands, but I don't know what else to do from here. Me and my father, we didn't know anything. My parents didn't know anything about how the draft went, how signing, any of that went. So we were very late to that game. So I missed that whole bus there on that one. I had started back working with my father. He was doing we were doing some construction work, so he was retired by then, and he had started back doing like some home renovations and stuff like that on the side to keep him busy. And I still remember we were out one day, and a guy called me on the phone. I walked outside, and he was like, "Hey, I want to invite you to a tryout. I heard that you could play really good, and you just might need a chance." So didn't know the guy from nowhere, and so he ended up. Name is Brian Nelson. So Brian actually coaches a baseball school back home. Brian played a little pro ball as well. If you see Brian's probably about 4'8" at tallest, but throws the ball like super hard. I'm talking like 90s.
Wow.
And you look at him like, where does this come from? And you know what? Brian was a great guy. Brian just, he wanted to give everybody a chance and stuff. So he brought me out there. And it was about, man, I swear it was over a couple hundred kids that he brought out there that day. And took us to the tryout. And that tryout, I think out of like 30 pitches, I probably hit like 12, 13 home runs in batting practice. And I had my fastest run times. And I still remember that first one I ran was like a 6. It was like a 6'7", 6'8". And he looked at me and he says, "They told me you can run for your size, but I didn't know you could move like that." He says, "You think you're fast, right?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I think I'm all right."
Yep.
And he put me up, the Brave Scout while I was there, he put me up against a shortstop, and I just blew the shortstop out of the water. And I think that's when they started noticing, like, wait, this guy can run to be that big.
Yeah.
And he signed me that day to Independent League. So he signed me independent ball, and that was with Windy City Thunderbolts. And right after he signed me, one of the Philly scouts came up, and he says, "Hey, we want to invite you to spring training down here with the Phillies." And I'm thinking, wow, all this happened overnight. But I went down to spring training with the Phillies, and I was on that lower level field. So I was on the field that they barely cut the grass, anything on there. And I'll tell anybody, coming from those HBCUs down there, the historically black colleges, we were not prepared for what I seen there. It was like it was almost like I was in a video game there, the way those kids were moving and throwing the ball. And I could compete with them, but I didn't have like that baseball, I'll say that baseball look. My uniform didn't match up to what they had on. They had the best of gear on, and the best gloves, the best bats, all of that. I had the basic stuff. So I'm coming out there with just the basic me, and I'm competing with these athletes. But we all know you still need to look that part as well
Yeah.
when you step onto that field, especially at that next level. You got to carry yourself a certain way. And I had never been taught that way. So that was a big learning curve for me. And they sent me to indie ball, and man, I bounced around from different teams on indie ball. Never had a long stint anywhere. Every team I went to, I played the same position as the MVP of the team. So
Oh,
you
geez.
know how that goes in indie
Yep.
ball. You're just another number. You know, you're there for a day, you're gone tomorrow. They could care less about it. And it's a business. You know,
Yep.
excuse me, I had to learn that part of it. It's a business. So I think I bounced around there for a couple years, and then 2000, so that'd have been 2010, I got released from everything, didn't have nothing going. And another guy called me, his name was Dwayne, and he says, hey, he says, a couple people told me about you, and he says, I'm looking to start my first agency, and he was like, I want you to be my first client. And I was like, I thought it was a guy playing around. I thought it was, you know, my buddies joking and everything.
Yep.
So he told me, if I get you a contract, he was like, will you go? I said, yeah, I'll go. So he says, I have a place called London. Would you go to London? And I'm like,
Yep.
London, England? No chance.
No chance.
And he was like, no, London, Canada. I'm like, never heard of that place. It's cold there, and they only got the Blue Jays. They play indoors.
Yeah.
So, you know, it took me 2 days to convince me it was a real place. I spoke on the phone with Roop, and I still tell Roop this to that day. When he told me to go on the website and look at the website, they had a picture of an old dude on the website with a Majors uniform on. And I'm like, am I going to play in an old man's league? Like, I'm in my mid-20s. And yeah, he had an old man. I think it was Arden Edie on.
Yeah, it was probably Arden's picture. It was probably Arden's.
Yeah.
It was Arden or one of the
looking
guys
like,
back there.
man, yeah, I'm like, where's he sending me to? But you know what? Me and Roop talked for a while. And then Roop was able to, back then I was able to get into some training with some guys. So I ran into Cecil Fielder and Marquise Grissom, all those guys, Delino DeShields, all those guys were in Atlanta, still training ex-pro guys and pro guys down there and young kids. And, you know, Cecil Fielder took me in, and he actually called Roop on my behalf and was like, hey, give this guy a chance. And him and Roop talked for a long time.
Wow.
And Roop called me back and was like, hey, I'm going to bring you. And he named another guy, Chauncey Ward. He says, I'm going to bring you guys up on a trial basis. He's like, I can't guarantee you anything. You come up, you try out, and you go from there. And yeah, came up, and you know what, Roop and Scott, they opened their arms to me, and you know what, I've been here ever since, just about.
Oh, exactly. I think Matt actually sent me the picture of the day you signed the contract with Roop, and you just look like a deer in the headlights. Like you're just like totally, what's going on? Like just out of it. Like yeah.
He called, you know what? He caught us off guard, and Roop was actually really nice about it. You know what? He signed us that first day after practice, I believe it was.
Yeah.
We went out to the field, and yeah, he signed us that first day after batting practice. I think I cost him a lot of money on those balls that day. We were playing on a city park, and you couldn't go across the street to get the balls. And I think the field was small, and I tried to lose every one of them he threw.
Yeah. So when you first walked into Labatt Park, what was your initial reaction? Like, I remember when my first time was in there, that was 94.
Mm-hmm.
The Tigers were still playing out of there. So, you know, there were still things, there was still stuff about there. I just remember being in awe. Like, I was awestruck because the only other place I'd been in this at that time was obviously would have been the Exhibition Stadium and the Sky Dome back then. So it was just like, here I am walking in this park and just like, I'm looking around at this place going, wow, these guys are so lucky to play in this place every time. Like, I still,
you know what, and
to this day, I still do that. I still like I walk in there and I just feel it as I'm walking in, or we're driving through the gate at the front, and it's just like Jenny will look at me and it's like, you're getting the chills again. I'm like, yeah, I'm just everything's hitting me all at once again.
For sure. You know, and I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot of history about Labatt Park. And as I got here, I tried to learn a little bit more as we go. And I would walk around the field, I would read all the plaques and everything. And you don't get that real feeling of Labatt Park, I'll say, into that first Friday night game. When you put on that uniform and you go back out there and it's a couple hundred to 1,000 something fans out there in the stands, and they're calling your number out and everybody cheers for you. it feels like when they turn those lights on that Friday night game, man, it's another feeling. It's like the spirits of all the greats that have played in that park.
Yeah.
They're right there with you. They're pushing you to keep going. And it's just something about that park, man. You want to give your all when you're there. I know every athlete says that, when we play, we want to give 100%. There's something about Labatt Park that gives you that extra 10%. Say, I want to give 110%.
Yep.
These fans out here, they're counting on me. These kids are counting on me. I want to leave my name as a legacy on that field. So I got to give that little extra coming out at Labatt Park.
Oh, exactly. And that's just what I was taking away from those, just watching you play and how you interact with the fans after the game. Even it's just something, you're always the first one on the field to sign autographs. You're always the last one off the field. When the last kid is left, you finally walk off the field and everything else. It's one of those things that, if I can pass that on to anybody else in this league, follow Cleveland's example as far as that stuff goes, because you never know. You might be that kid's first game, and that might be that first memory for that youngster or whatever else, or that it might be somebody's last game too. You never know. So it's just as far as that, you never know.
And I take that to heart. Like I always say, coming from where I'm from, a lot of people didn't come back to our neighborhoods and give back. I always try to tell those guys it's a privilege to be here. These people might be paying. Everybody can afford to go on vacations or take summer trips and things like that. So you never know what family's out there, and this is their summer trip. So let's go out there, put a smile on our face, and try to get these. Try to make the best we can for this family that's out here. You never know what's going to happen to them when they leave this park or what's going to happen down the road.
Yep.
You can change so many lives. Look at our photographer, Matt Hiscox. Yep. I met Matt Hiscox at a fundraiser, and look at him now. He's been with the majors a couple of years, and taking pictures and stuff. You know,
exactly.
And it's just, you got to go out there. Those kids are so happy. We are like to those real young kids, we are like the Blue Jays to them. We're something special to them. So, whether I strike out, whether I hit a home run, is you go out there with a smile on your face. You take out that frustration inside the dugout, inside the clubhouse later. But while you're out there, just try to get those kids the best show you can.
All right, let's take you back to your first season in Intercounty. Of course, the Friday night game actually got rained out. So your IBL debut happens in Kitchener. Do you remember this?
You know what? I was happy.
Yeah.
I was happy about that, and I'll tell you why. If everybody would have went back to that, like I say, when I first went out there, they don't know. I got hurt in the exhibition game 2 weeks before
against
opening day.
Yeah.
Against Jetbox, yes.
Yeah.
So I took off running from second base to first, and my back gave out.
Oh, man.
I was walking around. I didn't practice that whole week leading up to that first game. I couldn't walk.
Yep.
And I still remember the doctors in there, the chiropractors working on me, massage therapist.
Yeah.
And Root was like, "What am I going to do with you?" He's like, "You look like you're 90 years old walking around." I says, and you know what? I cried. He'll tell you I cried. I begged. I said, "Hey, Root," I said, "give me 2 weeks, man." I told him, I said, "Give me a week.
Yeah.
I'll be okay." I said, "I promise you. Give me a week. I'll be okay." And that rain out, I was so happy because I wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Okay, we're going to Kitchener." He says, "Can you play?" I said, "Man, you give me a shot, I guarantee you I can play."
So where'd the first one go out?
Yeah.
Where'd the first one go out?
Yeah, the first one went out of left field. It didn't just go out of left field.
Well, no, obviously not. Not
highway.
No, I wasn't there for that, but but you led the league in home runs that year, in your rookie year.
Yeah,
And it was just like, it's one of those crazy rules the Intercounty has, but like, you have to be Canadian to win the Rookie of the Year, or you would have won it that year. I'm pretty sure of it, based on your numbers. No, based on your numbers,
Yeah,
I think you would have won it.
Yeah, they changed so many. I always tell people they changed so many rules after a couple years that I was here. Like you had to be Canadian to win that, and you couldn't do certain things. I'm like, man, I'm out here killing these guys right now. I was fortunate to have a great season, but I didn't get recognized for that. Like I say, that's another All-Star nod that I would have had on there, or a Rookie of the Year nod that I could have had on there for sure.
Yeah. So then you get yourself established in this league and everything else. And I still remember the first time you came to Guelph. And I was sitting up the press box, setting up something. I think I was running music or whatever I was doing that day. And you get in this, you're in there taking batting practice, and I see like 6 or 7 in a row going over the fence. I'm going, oh great. So the neighbors on Kathleen Street have been calling about 15 minutes now, saying, "Come get your baseballs out of my lawn so I can finish mowing the grass."
You know what though? I blame that on you guys had a reporter there that day. Me and Sean still laugh at this. And they kept saying, "Hey, you're going up against the best. You're going up against Sean Riley. He's over here. He's a
Yeah.
home run hitter, all of that." And they was like, "So what are you gonna do?" I was like, "Well, I can't wait to meet this Sean guy." Not knowing I didn't know Sean was as great as he was. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't wait to meet this Sean guy. I'm gonna show him how to hit.
I'm
He
gonna
proved
show
me
him
wrong
that.
too that day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I definitely tip my hat to Sean. He proved me wrong that day. But I also had to make a stand. I was like, I'm gonna show this reporter here that I can play with the best of them.
Yeah. So then you ingrained yourself into the community over the years, and I know you started
Mhm.
your own business later in the life and everything else. Scott and Roop were really instrumental, and I think you've been quoted as far without Scott and Roop, you wouldn't have what you got right now. And
For
that's
sure.
just that's always stuck with me too, just because it's just how much it stands up to the testament of both those guys and how
Mhm.
classy of a gentleman you are as far as that stuff goes. Just you know, 'cause you remember you recognize where you came from and how much they've been helping you on the road. Going back, I want to go back to when you were growing up. Who were your role models as far as baseball, whatever? Who was your role models in Atlanta back growing up as far as that stuff goes? Who did you watch? Who did you try to imitate?
Honestly, I would say my dad. And you know what? My dad never made it to the big leagues, but we had like men leagues around there, and my dad could hit. And he was
Yep.
a big fella like me, but my dad could hit. And he was almost like me. He liked to challenge people to show him how great he was. You
Mhm.
know, he was one of those guys that he could I'll tell him, like, he could out hit me as far as average power. Nah, I'd still telling me I can hit further than him, but that's always our debate. But honestly, I really looked up to my father because, like I say, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad just about made every college game I had, whether it was home or
Mhm.
away. Every tryout that I wanted to go to, he drove me to those. You know, he did the best that he knew how to do,
Exactly.
coming from, you know, a poor city in Atlanta. So he did the best he could. He would provide me with, if there was a new bat out, he tried his best, whether he had to work
Mhm.
overtime or, you know, I had to go out and help cut grass and do different things to get me the equipment to go out there. And he always made it fun for me. You know, some days I hated him because, you know, we didn't have the best program in college. And after then, he would make me, after we practiced at college, he says, "Well, that's just your warm up. That was waste of time. So now let's go over here and get some real work in."
Yeah.
You know, and he would keep me out there and make me practice and just push me. And you know, he told me if I was going to be on the field, that take it serious. Don't just go out there and, you know, just go through the motions. Take it serious. Learn how to get better and enjoy it and never take it for granted, because one day it's going to stop. 100%. One day it's going to come to a full stop, and all you can live on is your memories and your legacy and things like that. And that's how I say, that's how I try to carry myself now. You know,
Yeah.
one day it's going to stop,
Yeah.
and
Not
you
today.
gotta, and
Not
people are
today.
gonna remember you.
No.
Okay, yeah, okay, not today.
Not
And
today.
you know, people are gonna remember what you did.
Yeah.
And so that's, like I say, that was my role model. You know what? I watched a lot of athletes around the city play, but like I say, it wasn't too many when I was coming up that came back and gave to our community.
Mhm.
And if your parents didn't have the means to go out and play in those big leagues and stuff like that, we couldn't go out there and play.
Oh no, exactly.
But I could compete with them when they came down to, they always played our teams for what they call their stat boosters and
Yep.
things like that. But you know what? Their ERA rised on me because, you know, I was waiting for those fastballs. I can
Yep.
tell anybody I can hit the fastball. The curveball, you had a good
Yeah, not
chance of
so
getting,
much.
but the
Not so
fastball,
much.
I
Yeah.
didn't care about how hard you threw.
Yep.
You know, so those guys, they came to do stat boosters on our teams, but you know, we could compete with them. We were athletes, but we didn't have that skill and that knowledge that they had, you know, to perfect the sport. We could just go out there on our true athletic ability and compete with them, but we could never get over that hump to, you know, to really beat them,
Yeah.
you know.
So now you're looking back at the career and everything else. I think you're now number one in active home runs, and I think you're like 5 or 6 as far as actively as far as RBI. I think you're second in hits behind Castaldo. You're very close to some really big milestones as far as the numbers. I know they don't. I know you don't usually look at them too much, so I don't bring them up. So it's just as far as that stuff goes. But
Neil,
no, it's
you're
just
pushing on it, Neil.
I know I'm pushing on it, but I know. So I know. I remember you reading the article about your son saying, "Well, Dad, if you retire, you're not gonna be famous anymore." And I'm just want to tell Junior, I'm going, your dad is always going to be famous. He's always going to be famous. He's going to be always part of the London Majors history, part of this history of the intercounty. So when that day does come, not today, please, because I don't want to start bawling here on the air because it's just not happening. And because I remember we've talked over the years, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm going to play anymore and everything else. And there were some stories in the papers and everything else. It's just like, am I going to have to write this retirement article now? Like, just. And then it's like, and then the last minute he's coming back. Okay, thank God. Delete.
For sure.
Yeah.
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's when that season comes around, it's always hard for him. Like I said, I got a 9-year-old son now, and he loves baseball. I coach his team. He's on a competitive team, and my son's not to say that he's my son. Yeah, he's pretty good at it, but he loves the sport. It's not like I'm pushing it on him. So I think that's the fun thing for me. I don't have to push it on him. My son enjoys this. And if you ever come to a London Majors game, you'll see he beats every player on the field. When they warm up, he warms up. If they got on London Majors gear, he has on London Majors gear. He's an 8-year-old out there playing catch with grown men. And people look at him and like, they're throwing the ball hard at him. I'm like, he has to learn. So
I watched him take batting practice that one year. He was mashing balls up the center field going, man, goodness, this guy's he can swing. The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of my time is spent right now. Just allowing him to enjoy the game and doing that.
My dad and I were never close as far as that stuff goes. He didn't understand baseball. He came from India and everything else, so it's just like he understood that what drove me and everything else as far as that. My brother and I were huge Jays fans, so it was just like, okay, he took us to a couple games. He never quite understood it, but he understood what we were so passionate about. Like he'd come into our rooms and everything else. The late night games would be on the radio because, again, back then it was just, okay, we'd fall asleep to the games on, wake up, the country music is blaring. So, the game must be over.
For sure.
No. But it's just those things, those are the kind of moments I remember and everything else. And it's just, I'm glad you're able to build those memories with your son as far as that stuff goes. It's just because it's just a great learning experience for him as far as, he's on the field, he's interacting with the guys and everything else. Now, as we're going to harken back to your career in the intercounty, what are some of the big takeaways you have in your mindset? Who are some of the better at bats you've had, the tougher pitchers? I guess let's start with the toughest pitchers. Let's start with the toughest pitchers. Who seems to have Cleveland Brownlee's number?
You know what? I'm gonna say Custodio was good. I always tell people you gotta tip your hat to Custodio because the kid could throw hard, and he threw it when he wanted to. That was the crazy part. The guy did it when he wanted to. He played a quiet mental game with you. So I like playing him. Frank Garces, everybody knows Frank's one of the best pitchers to ever come through here.
Yeah.
Frank was always, to me, he was that aggravating pitcher because you would look at him and he never has any emotions on his face. And he'll throw a ball from 75 miles per hour, then he'll throw one past you 91, 92. And he'll just look at you the same way. And you're like, where the hell did this come from? This little guy. And he hasn't changed any emotions yet.
No.
So going over to Barry, always playing those guys. Lawson was a great guy. I always like to play Lawson because, Lawson's going to challenge you. Yeah, he always wanted to challenge you. Strecker, I hated when the game was close and we had to come down and face Strecker because he throws that loopy curveball that it goes any way it wants to. And you don't know how to just sit there and wait on it because one day he'll throw it and it's really high, the next day it's really low, and you just don't know which way it's going to come.
And plus it's coming from the sidearm, so it's coming from the sidearm. So it's like, good luck trying to get used to this. Try to adjust in the box.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're moving to the front of the box, other times you're at the back of the box, and it's just like, okay, I can't figure this guy out. Just put me on somehow.
Exactly. Going through those early Brantford years when they bought in all those guys could really throw. They had a couple pitchers that they bought in that could really throw. That gave us a good round. I forget the guy's name that played for Barry. He was the one-handed pitcher.
I can't remember his name. I know exactly who you're talking about, but yeah, he was tough too.
Yeah, he was tough to hit. And I always tell people, I'm like, man, this guy is tough to pitch, tough to hit against. because it was an unorthodox style that he pitched with, and it was always tough to hit against. I think if I go back and look over my career, I might have 2 hits off of him the whole time. And it always came up in big moments too. At the very end when he was closing out a game. Other than that, it was a couple of them that could really throw it. Deska always gave me a shot. Deska was never scared. So I like facing Deska because he was never scared of it. He didn't
the Polish Prince was never scared of anybody.
Yeah, you got to beat Deska, and he would throw. He didn't care. Those guys played a great game. He didn't care who you were. You could be the best. You could be the worst. He's gonna pitch you like he has to win, and I always respected that of Deska. So yeah, it was quite a few guys that could throw it. But I used to live up to those challenges. I like facing those guys just to see what I could do against them.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing was obviously the first time I actually got to call the game down in London, and I called your name the first time because I'd done it in golf so many times, but it was just it was totally different as far as doing it in London because it's like, okay, it's in front of his home crowd. It's his walk-up music. It's not some crazy crap we're playing just to mess with the guy. It was just like, I still have the clip. It's somewhere around, but it was just such a thrill as far as doing that. And I remember when you guys won the 2 championships back to back. There was 4 guys that I immediately sent messages to after you guys won the first one. You, Keith Candale, Scott, and Roop, obviously, because you guys have been with the program for so long. I was just so happy for you guys to finally get over that hump because you had been there so many times. I remember the one year I was working with Toronto and it came down to a game 7 at your park, and it was just like,
oh, that was rough.
That was a rough one for you guys, but I was like,
that was rough.
I had the story written all up and like, okay, London's moving on, blah, 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 blah. And then the 9th inning happened, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to have to delete this whole story, and I've got 5 minutes before deadline. I was just
that was rough.
That was rough. It was just, it was one of those weird nights. It was just like, they did the same thing against Brantford the series before that too. So it was just like, okay, they just don't count these guys out. And then unfortunately ran out of gas, and then they ran out of gas against Barry. It was just flat out.
They just ran out against Barry.
Yeah.
You know what? Barry always has a great program though. Those guys, they stuck together for all those years that they won. Those guys stuck together and they had a great program. I always tell people they adapted to each other. Yep. If you look back at it, they're like we always say, they've been one of the best hit and run teams that I've ever played against in my life. Those guys could you had Spataro, you had DeGrace, you had Jackson, you had all of those guys that could and they were at the top of the lineup and they could just hit and run and steal on you at any time. So it was hard to compete with that. Then you drop down and you got to face Atkinson, you got to face Castaldo, you got to face all those guys, and they're power hitters. You just battled with 3 of the best hitters in the league, and now you got the rest of them coming up now, the other power hitters that are the best in the league. How do you compete with that lineup at that time? And those guys were just good. You had the Stevie Lewis's out there. All of those guys, they learned to play together, and that's how they were beating people, man. Like I tell anybody, did they have the best pitching staff? No. But they put up runs and they hit.
Well, exactly. It was just like, if they weren't going to beat you with the pitching, they were going to find a way to beat you with the bats. And I think that was just, because it was like, we see they could just out hit people like crazily. they go on the run, and it's just like, they were almost a totally different team in the regular season, but that come playoff time, it was just like, good luck, get out of their way, because they're going
exactly. They turned it up an extra notch, and you're like, where did this come from? Like you say, during regular season, those guys, you can beat on them sometimes, but then that playoff, those guys, they just hit and run like no other team I've seen before. They stopped us from another. I always say they stopped us from another championship. That Barry team stopped us from winning another one early.
Yeah, probably I think 2016 where you guys were.
Yep, 2016. That Barry team stopped us from winning another one early.
Yep. And then we had COVID hit and everything else. We took the league took the break. You guys played the legacy games just to keep the streak alive at Labatt Park. And then you come back in 2022 and what the heck happened to you? Like, where did these numbers come out of? Like, you're not supposed to do this at 37, 38, Mr. Brownlee. You're just not supposed to do it.
You know what? I fell in love with the game again. And it was fun to me. My son was at that age that he really liked it. And we had a great team. Root put together a great team that year, and we competed against each other. We we didn't stop. Everybody wanted to be the best on the team that year. From everybody we had on the team, if somebody had to sub out, you didn't want anybody to sub for you because they could play and they wouldn't take your position, And that was, like I say, to me, that was one of the best teams. I will say that was the best London Majors team ever there. And we just wanted to compete with each other. Everybody wanted to see who was the best on the team. And we had Robert Mullen that year, and he was having a phenomenal season. And me and him would battle every single day. I'm like, you'll never catch up to me, kid. And he just pushed me. Me and Byron still battle to this day. And we push each other to try to be better and try to be great. And that year, like I say, man, I had a great year, and everything started falling perfect for me. I fell in love with the game again. I was able to get a little bit more working out, and I was in better shape. All of those kind of things. You need those things to be better at what you want to do, and I was able to do that, and I had fun. I loved going to play away games because I knew that I was on the top of my game and I could taunt the crowd then. So it was nothing you could say to me, Love going to Welland just to taunt those guys.
Yeah. Like, I don't think as much as they might boo you, but I think if you saw them all in the parking lot afterwards, they'll be the first one to say, they pat you on the back and say, hey, great game or something, just because it's a sign of respect too. It's like, they're not booing you, Cleveland. They're quietly envy of you not being on their team and what you're doing against their teams. Like, stop beating us up, for God's sakes.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what? I'll tell anybody, I love going to Welland just to get them. I knew that I could get up under that crowd skin and get all those guys going against me. And we would laugh and I would mess with them. And if God forbid I hit a home run there, they knew not to say anything else to me the rest of that night, because I would just, en route, would be like, Cleve, would you stop? Cleve, stop. And I'm like, nope, I got him. I got him. Now there's nothing you can say to me. Like, you can bench me, whatever. I'm still going to walk through this crowd and mess with all these people out here. And, Ryan's a great guy over there. I love getting on Ryan. And, ever since Ryan was, I first got to Ryan when he was over at Burlington.
Yeah.
And I knew the announcer that day. And I went up and told the announcer that he had to play a walkout song for me. And he did it at Burlington.
Oh,
and Ryan, you could see him running across the field. Oh, I still remember. I laughed so much. I was like, I got him now. Man, that's and I had the announcer play a walkout song for me in Burlington. Oh, Ryan got all over the guy. But, it was just the little things like that.
Yeah.
And Ryan runs a great ship over there. And like I say, every time I go over there, I speak to him. And, I just like pushing those guys. And like I say, everybody likes to come to London and see the kind of show that we put on and things like that. So, man, it just, that keeps the game going. That's what the IBL to me is about. It keeps that game going. You got great talent, but it's also people like Rube, Scott, and the Brantford coaches, the Welland coaches that give kids like me those chances that come from smaller places that you probably would have never heard of. Yeah, we got some big names that come in the league, but some of those ones that stand out, we're those kids that came from these small towns that you never heard of and play the game and the fans fall in love with it and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we got to talk about the business off the field and what you're doing with the Better Bin Company. How did this get started? Now, was this something you thought up of, or was this something you bought into?
Yeah, so it's not mine. So I took over as general manager of it.
Okay.
There's a guy here named Jim Graham. So Jim Graham runs Tri Recycling. So that's like a local construction demolition recycling facility here in Southwestern Ontario. So he gave me an opportunity that we had an idea. So the Better Bin Company, it's a collapsible bin. You might see them all around the cities, Southwestern Ontario now. And a lot of home builders take to them. And so, he gave me the opportunity to take it and run wild with it to see what I can do with it. He entrusted in me to say, hey, go out and try something. Let's see how big can we get this company, and I love it. I got a great team that I work with. Work all across Southwestern Ontario. When we started with one truck, maybe working 1 to 2 days a week. Now I got 6 trucks of my own and 3 subcontractors that work with us. And, we compete with some of the biggest waste companies in Canada now on service levels and things like that. And, to me, it was almost like playing on the field. If you're going to do something and it has to take care of your family, you might as well go all in on it and try your best with it. And it's a service I provide. And it's not this you call in and we're done with you. No, most of the times I go out and I see my customers, I talk to them, I take them lunch or, something just to check up on them. That was one of the things that we did want to change about the company. We didn't want to be like a big corporate company. We wanted to be more of, if you call us, we build that relationship with you, So that's what I do when I don't have on a uniform. And I honestly, I love it. I enjoy every bit of it.
That's awesome. And I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up, my friend. It's been so great to catch up again and everything else. You didn't break my heart tonight, so that's good.
I didn't know if you could see me too good. The light was blinding.
Oh God, here he goes with these things.
And I didn't know if you could see me too well off of that. I was trying to adjust the lighting in my house to make sure all the glare was coming down.
Cleveland, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.